Welcome to Advent of Tessellations 2024. My name is Madonna Yoder, and you're joining hundreds of folders around the world on this 25-day journey into the infinite world of repeating patterns folded from a single sheet of paper. You'll discover many different twists in this challenge, building up to advanced patterns with hybrid hexagon twists. On day 17 of Advent of Tess, we are going to fold some more of these hybrid hexagon twists, but this time they're not going to be in the center of the paper, so we're going to have to understand a little bit more of what's going on with the inner references instead of the outer references with the edges. So this pattern is going to start with 6 triangle twists and then get into these hybrid hexagons, and there's some closed hexagon twists hiding on the back side. So we're using a 24-fold triangle grid on a hexagon, and if you'd like to see instructions for that grid and crease patterns for all of these tutorials, but particularly for today's, make sure that you're signed up for email reminders at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent, and you can also hit the checkbox that says sign me up for the course. It's a free course where you can see all of the years of Advent of Tess in one place. So let's get started with folding. I'm going to first mark the center of my paper. I'm going to do a dot for now because that's going to get covered up, and we're going to zoom in. So with this dot, I want to fold some triangle twists, any triangle twist of those 6 triangles first, and specifically we want to fold these one at a time. So there's no bonus for trying to do all 6 at the same time. It's just as easy to do just one. One of the structures we'll see around the center point is a great big triangle of valley folds. At least we'll see it in the crease pattern, or we'll see it as soon as the pattern is folded. And we're going to have mountain folds, creating a nice big hexagon, 2 grid spacings per edge around this triangle of valleys. And then there's also going to be mountain folds heading out to the corners, precisely the corners of the paper. So this great big hexagon might look very familiar from day 1. And what I'm going to do is fold just one triangle first. So I'm picking this one on my right, partly because it's a right-handed twist and partly it's just on the right-hand side of the paper. So I'm going to bring up the 3 mountain folds of that intersection, completely ignoring the fact that these mountains only go 2 grid spacings. I'm going to run them all the way out to the edge of the paper. And then one of these mountains has a valley fold marked already, so I'm going to fold that one into the center and set up the rest of my pleats so it's rotating around relative to that center fold. And if I was setting this up without drawing on the paper, what I would do is find my center point and either like keep a solid eye on it or mark it. And actually, really, I don't even need to do that. I'm going to look at one corner of the paper and have a valley fold 1 spacing away, mountain fold 1 spacing further, fold that over, and then skip a corner. And on the next corner, I'm going to have my mountain straight to the corner of the paper. And those 2 are going to come in, they're going to intersect at a particular point. I'm going to run that 3rd pleat out. And since I have the valley on the first of those pleats, that is going to determine where the rest of my pleats go. And then I can squash my closed triangle twist. And I'm going to work my way around this way because it gives me nicer overlaps in the end. So my next twist is going to be up above here. The center of the triangle is going to be 1 spacing out, from the corner of the existing triangle twist. So open up that pleat, erase the extension that goes past my target intersection, send out my other two directions of mountain folds, and make sure that those are all rotating around in a way that keeps this corner of the existing triangle twist down and makes it rotational so that I can squash my new closed triangle twist. And I'm going to keep going around in the same direction. I'm just going to rotate the paper so that the area I want to work is on my right-hand side. If you're left-handed, of course, you're going to want to work from your left-hand side. And likewise, one spacing out from the corner of the existing triangle twist. I'm going to put in a three-way intersection of mountain folds, and that is going to allow me to squash my third closed triangle twist. So it's a very easy start to today's pattern. And rotating around, I have these two parallel pleats. If we're looking at these like a set of stairs, then this pleat on the right is at the top of the stairs. I'm going to start at the top of the stairs, putting in another closed triangle twist, still having that target grid intersection, one grid spacing out from the corner of the neighboring twist, and squash. And now I've set myself up so that the valley fold between these two twists is on the inside, which means that when I open the pleat overlap and find this I-beam structure, so there it looks like an I, or I can bring it over to my right-hand side. It still looks like an I. Running those mountain folds out to the edge of the paper, and I have the option of, instead of setting up all of the pleats to get all of the triangle twists set up to squash, I can leave one of those flipped over, one of the ones going out to the corner flipped over, which provides a nice platform for squashing the remaining twist. And then I can flip that pleat going out to the edge back and squash my final twist for this central group of 6. So that's what's going on with our central twists. And isn't it lovely how when I drew that giant hexagon in the beginning, it created this nice little star effect. Well, the hexagon and the mountains going out from them. But that's a lovely coincidence of geometry. The original hexagon is actually going in and out and out and in and out and out and in. Yeah, very interesting effect when you start playing with patterns that are made on the paper before it's folded. So next, the thing to focus on is I'm grabbing a pair of triangles for my right-hand side where the valley between the triangles is on the outside. So that is the key feature right here. This is a corner of these triangles that I can lift up. These pleats are going above and below to the right. And I'm going to be putting a hybrid hexagon twist on this upper pleat. One of the cues that I'm reading off of the crease pattern, which again, you can get the crease pattern if you're signed up for email reminders at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent, or if you get the crease pattern ebook, all of the mini patterns are in there too. And that ebook is at gatheringfolds.com. One of the cues that I can read from there is that I have a valley fold at tube pleat spacing, so 2 spaces from this valley under the triangles. And That valley fold and the mountain that accompanies it is a closed type plate going into this hybrid hexagon. The mountain above, this existing mountain, is one of the open type pleats. And we're going to see some interesting effects that happen with these pleats combined together. One of the things that'll make it easier for me to set up the next twist, just while I'm setting up this hybrid hexagon, is if I reorder a little bit in here. Well, technically not reordering, because I want to create a compound wrap. I want to let that valley come down through the mountain and actually mirror over the mountain and come down and create this zigzag. So we're going to have the valley bouncing over this mountain. So that's on a different grid line. The grid line it was originally on was this one here. And then coming down and bouncing again. And my mountain is following this zigzag, one spacing removed. So that's going to be a lot easier for us to get into the next twist. Although I still might decide that we're going a different way around. And one of the things that I want to emphasize with this is that it might look like we're setting up an open hexagon. It might look like we're setting up a closed hexagon, but we need to remember that this mountain is going through the center of the twist, and this mountain is not. It's going one spacing away from the center, which means that the center is on this grid line one space before it reaches that mountain, because remember the valley's on the far side and the center is not hitting the valley. So this is the center of my hybrid hexagon twist. And if I want the next pleat added, so the other thing that's different about this hybrid hexagon is that this is actually a left-handed hybrid hexagon twist. Last time we did a right-handed threefold hybrid hexagon twist. So if we want our pleats to alternate hitting the center and not hitting the center, my next grid direction is here. And since this one hit the center, I need the next one to not hit the center. It's going to run out here. So there's my next grid line, or my next mountain fold, and we can lay it down on its valley. The next direction, we do want to hit the center, so that's good. We can put it there. The next one, we want to miss the center again. So staying a grid spacing away and heading out into the edge of the paper. And then we're still missing one direction. We're missing the one going into the center this way. So that is going to feed back under this existing pleat. We're going to keep the existing pleat from the triangle closed as we fold through. And that will allow us to get our hybrid hexagon twist in place. And with that, we've got these little pillows that we need to flatten. So notice I'm really creating these horizontal folds, and it I'm really just encouraging it to get into the right, like to get everything in the right orientation with the bone folder. I'm not making the folds with the bone folder. It just needs to be all popped in so I can then press from the top to solidify the folds. Okay, so I'm back in my original orientation. I'm gonna go ahead and pop an A on one of these triangles, and we're going to flip the paper over. I've got this hybrid hexagon in my right hand as I'm flipping the paper over. And I'll stick a B on here. So if you're drawing your A's and B's the same way, you can use that for orienting your paper in future steps. Up here we have that compound wrap, and down here we have a pleat overlap. I'm actually going to go in the direction of the pleat overlap, and the way that the structure for this pattern is set up is I'm going to have 3 triangles for every hexagon, whether that's a hybrid hexagon or a closed hexagon. And those triangles are all going to be on the A side. The hybrid hexagon twists are all going to be on the A side. It's just the closed hexagon twists that are going to be here on the B side. And so each triangle has each hexagon has 3 triangles, which leaves 3 pleats not going to triangles. And those 3 pleats are going directly to other hexagons. So it's going to alternate pleats. One pleat going to a triangle, the next pleat going to a hexagon. One pleat going to a triangle, the next pleat going to a hexagon, although we're not going to get that far in the pattern. One pleat going to a triangle, the next pleat going to a hexagon. So this is the structure that I call hexagons and triangles threefold, because we do see threefold rotational symmetry in each of our hexagon twists. So this pleat overlap I'm going to open up, and it's going to become a closed hexagon twist. So these 2 mountain folds are coming directly into the center. That is going to be the point where all of our other pleats are emanating out of. An additional cue that we have is that we are going to have tube pleat spacing between these 2 parallel pleats. And all of the mountain folds on one side of the twist are going to continue on the same grid line out the opposite side of the twist. We are going to create 2 pleat overlaps as we set up this closed hexagon twist. One over here that will resolve with 2 triangle twists on the other side, and one over here that's going to feed into the next hybrid hexagon twist. Getting our closed hexagon set up, I still have 2 grid spacings that it's floating above the stable surface. And I'm going to bop it and grab it and squeeze a little bit as I twist around. It's going to look crumpled in the beginning, but we can smooth that out by making those folds go more and more onto the grid lines, because everything is on grid lines with the closed hexagon twist. Okay, so with that hexagon in place, I'm going to grab this pleat overlap between these 2 hexagon twists, or the threefold hybrid and the closed hexagon. Grabbing those pleats, I'll flip back to the A side, and we want to let those be 2 closed triangle twists. This is the same overlap that we saw for finishing triangles 5 and 6. So I'm going to open up the pleat overlap so that I have my I-beam structure. I have 2 spaces between these 3-way intersections of mountain folds. I can let one of those lay down flat while I squash the other, and then flip the pleat going to the outside to squash the second of these two triangles. And one cue that we've done this correctly is that the corners of the triangles are going to just touch the corner or the sides of our hybrid hexagon twist. So moving onwards, we're going to go not to our compound wrap, but the other direction around. We're going to go past our closed hexagon hole and into our next hybrid hexagon. So these are the two pleats that we saw set up before when we looked at this hybrid hexagon. We have the pleat coming from the triangle and the pleat creating a tube around the group of triangles. So here's the pleat making the tube. That one we saw was going straight into the center of the hybrid. So this is going through the center. That's going one space away from the center, and therefore there's my center point. And lifting up, notice how instead of leaving this as a single jagged tooth, I'm lifting a little bit more. So I'm coming in and then going out 2 spaces, because my next fold that I'm going to make is this next open type pleat. It needs to miss the center by 1 grid spacing. And it's going to create a pleat overlap over here. And one of the things I would like to do sooner rather than later with this hybrid hexagon is get my closed pleat that's coming out from here. It's just easier to set that up when I have, when I'm not trying to control as many of the pleats in other areas, because this is a longer pleat than most of the ones that are just going straight to the edge. It's crossing through another pleat. So it's better to have that one stable before we do the shorter pleats. And then, so we've got a closed type, an open type, a closed type, an open type. My next direction needs to be a closed type. And then my final grid direction needs to be an open type plate. I'm saying open and closed type because of how they're interacting with the center. Are they interacting like it's a open hexagon, or are they interacting like it's a closed hexagon? So it might not look like these closed type pleats are making it all the way into the center. You might be tempted to pinch that further, or you might be tempted to drop them down into these valleys, but we really need that mountain to come up as a mountain fold all the way in, even though we're going to interrupt that with a valley as soon as we start squashing this twist. So that's a common mistake that I've seen with people folding hybrid hexagon twists, is not letting the closed type pleats stay as mountain folds all the way up in to that central area. So now we have 2 pleat overlaps. One of them is overlaps between 2 of our hexagon twists, and another is an overlap between a hexagon and a pleat from a triangle. While we're on this side, I'll take care of this overlap between 2 hexagons to put in 2 more closed triangle twists. This is a less friendly overlap to open, but I can still open it up. I can get that I-beam structure with 2 spaces between the grid intersections that have 3-way intersections of mountain folds. I can set up those triangles, and I do have a little bit of wiggle room. So I could take one of these pleats going to the outside and flip it, but that's gonna kind of be locking in under and adding layers under what I'm squashing. The freedom I have is I can actually lift the tip of this hybrid hexagon without adding any new grid lines or adding any new folds. So I can squash first one and then the other of these two triangle twists. So we can kind of see here that the 3 triangles from the closed hexagon on the back are these 3, and then the 3 from the hybrid are going to be these 2 and a third that's not in place yet. From here we have only one pleat overlap, well, that and the compound wrap, but we'll get back to that later on. And we're going to continue around, flipping the paper over to work on that pleat overlap, which is going to need a closed hexagon twist. So as I'm opening the pleat overlap, I'm looking for that little hexagon that surrounds the point of intersection of these 2 mountain folds, making sure that that little hexagon is there. And then I will add all of the new pleats that are needed for this closed hexagon. Which will create a pleat overlap with one of the pleats from my recent hybrid hexagon. And once that closed hexagon is in place, as this tower 2 grid spacings lifted off of the floor that's completely flat, I will bop the top a bit, keep that kind of touch to hold all of these edges in place, and grab and squeeze a little as I give it a sharp twist. The sharper you twist it, the cleaner it'll come down. You might have noticed the last one I twisted very slowly and it was very crumpled. This one I twisted faster and it came out cleaner. Not 100% guarantee, but usually the faster you twist, the cleaner it comes out. And now I'm going to flip back to the A side to work on this pleat overlap that needs 2 triangle twists because the pleats are both coming from hexagon twists. So opening that up, I get my I-beam structure with 2 spaces between my 3-way intersections of mountain folds, and I can lay that in, then flip the pleat going to the outside to squash first one and then the other of my closed triangle twists. Okay, so next up, rotating around, I've got this overlap where I want to put a new hybrid hexagon twist. And it's specifically the overlap between this closed hexagon and this pleat coming from the triangle, not the overlap further out with the pleat coming from the compound wrap. And in opening that up, again, I want to be aware that this pleat coming from the closed hexagon is going through the center of my twist, and the pleat coming from the triangle is going 1 spacing away from the center. So then the pleat, so we have this direction, the pleat in the next direction needs to be coming straight to the center. So we'll lift up that grid line that comes straight into the center and send a pleat back through the compound wrap, which is a little bit messy, but it's fine. It's just a lot of layers. And then we can add our remaining pleats around the center. So in this direction, this one was closed type, this one's going to be open type, 1 spacing away from the center. The next direction is going to be closed type, and the final direction is going to be open, finishing this giant triangle around the center. It's kind of the theme for today. There's going to be giant triangles around central points. We saw it in the very center with those valley folds, and now we're seeing it with the mountain folds of the hybrid hexagon twists. From there, I can go ahead and squash my hybrid hexagon using my bone folder or fingers or other tool to dimple those pillows, make them happy to all fold in. And now I have a pleat overlap between my prior closed hexagon and my new hybrid hexagon that I need to turn into 2 closed triangle twists. This is a less than friendly overlap to open, but I can still get it in place. And this I'm setting up so that I'm ready to squash them both, but then I can lift the corner of my hybrid hexagon and lay the top one down flat to squash the bottom triangle, and then put that corner back to squash the upper triangle. It just makes it a little easier to get clean squashes on those closed triangle twists. Okay, so what do we have left? Right now we have all 3 of our hybrid hexagons. We've got our triangles in the center. We have 2 of our closed hexagons, so there's 1 of those left. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of triangles around the outside, and we're going to need 6 of those. So we've got 1 closed hexagon and 2 pairs of triangle twists left. The closed hexagon is going to be required to have the pleats going into those pairs of triangles, so that's what we're going to work on next. Flipping the paper over, I need to open up this whole tangle of pleat overlaps. So I had that compound wrap from before. I have these pleats laying over each other. I'm going to need to lift that whole area up, and I need to recognize that I had this layer trapped and undo that fold, which was in place earlier from some of the wraps, and let the pleat from my hybrid hexagon carry outwards. So now I have 1, 2, 3 mountain folds all pointing to the same location, and that is going to be the center of my closed hexagon twist. And I'm going to be creating all of these new pleats for that closed hexagon, creating pleat overlaps on both sides. And then I'm going to bop it and grab it and give it a very sharp twist so it lays down nicely. And there's the closed hexagon twist that we need. Now we can return to our A side, and we have 1 friendly overlap and 1 less friendly overlap, but still workable overlap that we need to put in 2 closed triangle twists on each. So I'll start with the friendly one. Opening that up, I get my I-beam structure that we've seen quite a few times already, with 2 grid spacings between my 3-way intersections of mountain folds. And I can let one of those lay down flat while I squash the other, and then flip that pleat going to the edge to squash the remaining triangle twist. And then coming around to my final pleat overlap, I'm going to open her up. This is going to be slightly more challenging, really just pushing from the back. And find that I-beam structure. This time the center of the eye is going to point out. And like we've seen before, we can take the tip of that hybrid hexagon and push it up so that that upper triangle can lay down flat while we squash the lower, and then bring the tip back down to squash the upper triangle. And there we are. That is building blocks. So if you'd like to see 2 different ways to continue folding this pattern, which basically is, do we continue it with these hexagon twists in positions of 3-fold rotational symmetry, or do we add more space between repeats so that we have these clusters that are then spaced a little further apart? If you want to see both of those crease patterns, definitely check out the Advent of Tess 2024 ebook at gatheringfolds.com. It's also available through Origami USA and origamishop.com. And make sure when you finish this and you're posting to tag me at Gathering Folds on Instagram or Facebook. If you need help, ask on my Discord server. And when you're posting, if you could use hashtag Advent of Tess or Advent of Tess 24, that will help other people see what you're folding. So happy folding, everyone, and see you tomorrow when we will be folding the same exact twists with slightly different relationships to each other. See you then.